The Chargers have a ton of cap space and many fans want to see them add a weapon, but maybe they should go big game hunting instead on the interior of the offensive line with someone like Trey Smith.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, throughout the season, it was abundantly clear that the Chargers had to upgrade the interior of their offensive line, and I want the absolute best protection that money can buy. And on the interior, to me, that is definitely Trey Smith. So I hope that the Chargers go make him one of the highest paid guards in the league to protect Justin Herbert. And that begs the question, what will Joe Hortiz offseason plan be? What will he do with all the money that he has available? And unfortunately, the Chargers lose their safety coach, Chris O'Leary, and they will be in Brazil for another international game. And that's going to be exciting.
It is exciting, but it brings its own kind of difficulties as well that we'll get into. But today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. David, there's a lot of talk about free agency, and there's a lot of time before free agency starts, and we'll have a much better idea after we, find out who the Chargers are going to re-sign and who they're going to release to see how much money is available to them. But they're going to have money. If they want to go big game hunting, they can. I mean, as it stands right now, even pre-Joey Bosa, pre a Trey Pipkins cut potentially, you're sitting around $75, $76 million in cap space. If you want to go get somebody big, you can. And I think the big focus has been on guys like a T. Higgins, who we'll see if he actually hits free agency or not, or some other top weapons. And honestly, there's not a lot of top offensive skill players out there. Maybe the better kind of spin you should put on it, or maybe the better target you could go for, is ensuring that Justin Herbert has better protection in 2025, and that is where this voicemail from Athir comes from.
Daniel, David, this is Athir. Free agency around the corner. Who do you believe the first player will be signed for the Chargers? I am going Trey Smith. The Chargers will open the bank after the Chiefs Super Bowl loss and take him from the heart of the Chiefs fan. Let's go, baby. Who are you picking? Can't wait. Love you.
I love you, Athir. It's a great question, and one that I know Chargers fans are interested in. Everyone wants to see them improve the interior of the offensive line. And there are probably, arguably more options on the interior. But David, if the Chargers did want to be first on someone, if you wanted to go for someone like Trey Smith, it's going to happen in probably the first couple of days of free agency. Would you be good with it being someone like that, and that being kind of the big splash acquisition the Chargers make?
Absolutely. I am enamored with the possibility of putting Trey Smith in the middle of the Chargers offensive line. He is the type of player that the Chargers absolutely need. A proven commodity, somebody who's done it and excelled at the highest level of football. Over 1,000 snaps in all 4 seasons. PFF grades over 70 in all 4 seasons, giving up only 8 sacks combined in 4 seasons, and 2024 was his best year. So he got better and better and better, and in 2024, an 80.8 run block grade, a 70.6 pass block grade, only 2 sacks and 26 pressures allowed. Just to give you a little reminder on what the Chargers offensive line interior did at right guard, it was 8 sacks and 38 pressures from Trey Pipkins and Jamari Sawyer combined. So this is a massive, massive upgrade. Now, obviously, when it comes to massive upgrades on the interior of the offensive line, that means massive money. And so when we look at the top contracts for the guards, it's basically going to start between $16 and $21 million per season. So with Trey Smith, what he's been able to provide, his durability, and how good he is, he's probably going to reset the market at guard, but I think he's worth it.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that happens in free agency every year is you don't necessarily have to be the best guard to be the top paid guard in the league. And I think when things are all said and done, the top right guard is making 20.5 million, the top left guard and top guard in football is making 21 million. It's probably going to beat that. You're probably going to be paying $22 million per season for a guard. Will the Chargers do that with a potential Rashawn Slater extension coming down the pipeline and how those kind of numbers link up together? It's hard to say if they would or not, but if they were going to spend big, when you know what the priorities of this team and the philosophies of this team are, it would make sense for them to want to spend big on that position, especially seeing how their season ended, which was them just getting dominated, out-muscled, out-physicaled at the line of scrimmage. And
outsmarted.
Per PFF, it was actually 0 sacks allowed in 2024, 4 sacks allowed the last 3 seasons combined by Trey Smith. That's what you're looking for in front of Justin Herbert. And obviously, there's some caveats to that, right? Patrick Mahomes, one of the best sack avoiders in the NFL. He's surrounded by elite interior talent on the KC interior, standing next to a guy in Creed Humphrey who might be, one of, if not the best centers in the league.
Yeah.
But this is also a dude who allowed 26 pressures last year when you have a Jamari Sawyer and Trey Pipkins having 38 together, and obviously all of the sacks that those two guys allowed combined. Plus, you have a guy that's only 25 years old. So you have reasonable expectations that he is going to still play really, really well throughout the duration of this contract. So if you're going to spend top money, don't spend it on a Brian Bulaga way after their prime, right? Don't spend it on a Russell Okung or something like that. Spend it on someone who's entering their prime. I'd say the last red flag, the reason he was a 6th round pick to begin with is because he had a blood clot disorder known as a pulmonary emboli, which tanked his draft stock and made him, instead of maybe a 2nd round pick, a 6th round pick. He's played 4 seasons. It hasn't been an issue so far, so you would have to check out with the medicals. But this feels like a guy that you would go all in on if you wanted to spend top dollar for a position. I absolutely agree. Hey, if you're insuring one, right, starter, above average level player in the interior in free agency, sign me up for that, because I think you need at least one guy you feel good about. And we talked about his pass blocking snaps and his pass blocking grades. This is a dude who actually is much better as a run blocker. The 7th graded guard in football last year in the run blocking department. And you know that Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman would probably be licking their chops about that. But I think a lot of it has to do with how they approach free agency. And I think that's where this comes in from Big Daddy E, who says, will Joe Hortiz take a measured approach to free agency, trying to spread the money around, or will he go spend big money for a few free agents and try to fill holes with draft picks and more one-year deals? As always, thank you for the great content. Thank you for the great question. David, this is a big question as they go into free agency.
Yes, it is. And I think here it's going to be a little bit of a mixture of both, but overall, I think it's going to be a measured approach. Because like we talked about, the Chargers, after cuts, probably going to be looking around 100 million in cap space. Like they're going to have money to spend. So I think they're probably going to go out and get maybe 1, maybe 2, possibly sizable free agents. But I think one thing we have to remember and keep in mind is that Joe Hortiz wants that comp pick formula flowing. He wants those comp picks to continue to come through. So that means taking some chances on some, other contracts, maybe some one-year deals that may pan out and turn into a comp pick later. So I think that it's going to be a measured approach overall. And I think what he was able to do with a very small amount of money excites me for what he's going to be able to do for the large amount of money he's going to have available this offseason.
And I think that's the hard thing, is there's no precedent, at least in, the Chargers front office with Joe Hortiz, how he's going to handle it and how he will spend big money, because he didn't have the option to last year. He could not go out and sign somebody to a top of market deal last year when he started out $45 million over the cap. But you can't also think you're not going to bring in one-year deals, because how well some of those paid off for you, the J.K. Dobbins, the Poona Fords, the Christian Fultons. And I do think it will be a mix. I can't tell you confidently that they're going to pay someone and make them the highest paid player at that position, because we just don't have a precedent for it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to spend that money somehow. And unfortunately in the NFL, the kind of middle class of deals doesn't really exist anymore. It's really cheap deals and guys getting paid at or near the top of what their position gets paid. So it'll be really interesting. I think the one thing you saw from him last year is being able to build a competitive roster without mortgaging the future and giving you terrible salary cap health going into the future. And I still think they'll take that into consideration and try to make sure that, hey, if we're taking big swings, we know this is something that's going to pay off and a guy that's going to be playing at a high level for a long time. But we still have more to get into, because we do want to get more into this Chargers mailbag, since we missed Fan Mail Friday, and we have a great conspiracy theory about Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt that we have to get to and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys, as a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you. And that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in, because when you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free and share it with your network and get qualified candidates all in one place. All you have to do, post your job, and LinkedIn's new features can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. And that's a really big number, because that's not just, hey, LinkedIn will help you find someone 72% of the time. 72% of the time, you're getting someone you're not worried about having to replace a couple of months later. And all you have to do, post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Dave, we have more of this Chargers mailbag to get into, because we have a really great email that I got from Dustin, who's writing in from Red Line, Pennsylvania, who says, love listening to you guys every day the last few years since I discovered you. You two are legit. This is my first time emailing a question for Fan Mail Friday. I've been a diehard Chargers fan for 30 plus years, so I've seen them do things that leave me with trust issues. I think we can all get that.
Yep.
What if the Chargers don't actually plan to re-sign Rashawn Slater, or can't get a deal done because of money and terms? Are you in any way worried that Joe Alt was secretly drafted as an insurance policy to be a replacement left tackle if they let Rashawn walk? And that is Alt's natural position. Conspiracy theory, I know, but it's a thought. David, I'd be lying if this thought didn't cross my head at least once. I don't necessarily think it's a likely possibility, but to think that the addition of Joe Alt wouldn't at least play some factor in contract negotiations, or some factor in how the Chargers are kind of planning out their future, would be a little bit disingenuous. Again, I don't think this would happen, but it has crossed my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it as well, but quite frankly, the Chargers would be dumb if they didn't re-sign Rashawn Slater. I mean, I think we need to bring people back and remind them what the left tackle position looked like before Rashawn Slater. Well, guess what? It was 3 different left tackles in 3 straight years before Rashawn Slater was drafted. It was Russell Okung, Trent Scott, and Sam Tevy that played left tackle in 3 consecutive different years before Rashawn got here and stabilized the position. And you can go back even further than that, 10 seasons. Yeah. There's 6 or 7 guys that have played the left tackle position for the Chargers. That's not how it's supposed to be. No. You do not let go of high-end left tackles ever. And the Chargers definitely, I think they understand that, especially with Jim Harbaugh as the head coach, who truly obviously loves his offensive linemen, says his offensive linemen are weapons. He's not going anywhere. I fully expect them to sign him to an extension. Now, fortunately, if they do not want to bring him back, Joe Alt was fantastic. When they did put him at left tackle, it was 0 pressures, 0 sacks. He looked just as dominant as he did in college. So, you know, I'd much rather have 2 really good really good tackles than 1 really good tackle.
Well, and I think this becomes more of a real thing if he goes into the season without an extension. If you let him get to, and you'd still have a chance before 2026 started to get an extension done before anyone else would have a chance at him. But still, if you're letting it get to that point, I think it could be too late already. Yeah, I mean, it just brings on parts of the game that you don't really want to see in a bad relationship with a player that has been a resounding success for you and has been an all-pro player at left tackle. This is what I would say. If you were like the Packers, or you were the Eagles, or you were one of these teams that had such a good history of drafting late and developing offensive linemen and plug-and-play ability to where it doesn't seem like it matters who you put on there because the rest of your offensive line is so strong and you're able to develop guys and make them really good players even if they weren't drafted that way, then you could potentially pull something like this off. When you're the Chargers and you only have 2 good offensive linemen, the thought of letting one go sickens me to my stomach. It's adding, it's not subtracting. I don't think this could happen. I don't think that's the plan. But I don't think it's impossible either. I'd say it's a very, very small percentage chance. But yeah, I think you do whatever it takes to resign Rashawn Slater because he's a franchise left tackle, and you're still going to have Joe Alt for 3 years, pretty relatively cheap.
Yeah, for pennies
during
on the
whatever
dollar.
whatever that Rashawn Slater contract is. You're going to have to sign Joe Alt eventually, but you'll have 3 years with him still on his rookie contract where you're not really being affected by having to pay one gigantic sum to one of your tackles because the other one's not making an albatross amount at that point. So
yeah,
I don't think that's the plan right now, but hey, you have 2 really good tackles. Now build from there. Let's get to this next one here from Mark, who has something in the same vein where he says, with the first pick in the draft, if the top guard is available and the top tight end is available, which do you think they should take and why? David, we'll get more into the draft prospects as we get closer to the draft, obviously, but we've looked at and seen the top tight ends and watched some of their tape so far, and we are both very enamored with what they bring to the table, but I think this is a positional argument as well.
Yeah, it certainly is, but I've made my requests and what I want very, very clear, and I'll reiterate it here. I want an established presence on the offensive line. That means I want to get that person in free agency. I just want somebody that's been there and done that. I don't want to have to draft somebody and hope that he's going to be there. I think at least the small amount from what we've seen from the top tight ends, it's not hard to see how they could really plug and play and immediately become instant impact players on the offense for the Chargers and for Justin Herbert. So I am definitely all for taking one of those top tight ends in the draft, getting him paired up with Justin Herbert, and hopefully they're Batman and Robin for the next 10 years.
Yeah, maybe it's buyer's remorse on Zion Johnson, but like the Chargers desperately need blue chip offensive weapons, and not many are going to be available in free agency, and the ones that are available are going to be an insane bidding war that's going to cost so much, probably more than potentially what that player is worth. And we'll have the T. Higgins conversation at some point because I would love to see T. Higgins on the Chargers, and we'll see if he becomes available. But he's saying the top tight end is what Mark is asking, which in this case is Tyler Warren, which in this case is also Daniel Jeremiah's 5th overall ranked prospect. Colston Loveland is Daniel Jeremiah's 7th ranked prospect. The top guard on his board is the Alabama guard Booker, who is 14th, which is still really high, right? Like that's not something to sneeze at. Top 15
any
pick
position,
guard.
yeah.
This is what I would say though. I would just say this. I don't think there's a guard that transforms the Chargers offense. There's a guard that improves the Chargers offense, right? But transforms it like an elite offensive weapon can. I just don't see it. I mean, I just think that if you get a Tyler Warren, he has the chance to totally change your complexion of your offense, and also gives you a chance to be more flexible than Tyler Booker does, right? Than taking a guard would. If you have a tight end like Tyler Warren, you can split him out. You can keep him in line. You could have him be the wildcat quarterback if you want.
Put him everywhere.
Brings all sorts of different I mean, you saw what Brock Bowers was able to do. That's an anomaly. That doesn't happen very often. But if you have a chance to take a top guy like a Tyler Warren or even a Colston Loveland before the first guard, I would definitely lean myself in that direction. But let's get to one more here from Bitcoin Not Crypto, who says, should the Chargers trade down if Colston Loveland is unavailable at 22 so they can accumulate an extra day 2 or day 3 draft pick or more? So in this scenario, you're assuming Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland are both gone. So now you don't have either of the 2 tight end options at the top. And you can, now you have to decide on a different position because there's not going to be a 3rd tight end taken in the first round. David, would you be okay, right? Or how would it make you feel if the Chargers traded back?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be like horribly opposed to it, but also it's not Colston Loveland at 22 or bust for me either because the Chargers need to infuse more youth and talent at multiple positions, whether that's wide receiver, offensive line, edge, maybe corner. Like there are several positions on this team that I feel like they need to add a premium blue chip player to that group. So it depends. We'll have to see who's on the board and where we're at in that situation. It's just a little bit too early to make that determination, but I wouldn't hate it, depending on who's on the board.
It has a lot to do with that, right? The only thing we know in this scenario that the 2 tight ends are on the board in the first round. And it's supposed to be a very heavily talented defensive line draft. Maybe that's an underrated need. Maybe you go corner in the first round. We'll see who's available there. Maybe edge rusher, depending on if you can bring Khalil Mack back, becomes much more of a need in the first round. There's a lot of different ways you could go with it. And I will also say, this is also supposed to be a pretty good tight end draft as well. So it's not as if the Chargers don't get a tight end in the first round. they're totally screwed and won't be able to find an impact player for them in this draft. It's supposed to be really, really good. There's some good tight ends out there, and you have to hope they come away with one of them, right? But just because you don't get one in the first round at 22 doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to find somebody there that you really want. What I would also say is this, though. Chargers could have 10 draft picks when the comp pick, get officially announced. They're supposed to have 3 of them, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th, I believe is what it is, somewhere around there. How many day 3 picks do you need? Like, I love the fact that the Chargers got 2 fifth-round corners that they love, but we also saw guys like Cornelius Johnson get left off the roster because there's only so many spots you're going to have. If you add 10 more rookies into that pool, there's a good chance a couple of them aren't going to make it. So, yeah. Joe Hortiz, with one of the franchises that has traded back more than anyone else with the Ravens during his time there, I think he will move around, but I think a part of it has to be moving up too and trying to get really quality picks over quantity of picks at a certain point. But we still have more to get into because some news broke over the weekend that the Chargers lost a crucial coach on their staff, so we have to talk about that, and also them reportedly having a game in Brazil in 2025, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Prize Picks because the big game is almost here and there's no way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place to play daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded. Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action because all you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your money in cash, and Prize Picks has one free pick they're just going to give you for the big game. Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. So there's one projection down right there. And I feel okay about that because, hey, maybe he'll have exactly 1 yard. And that's all I have, right? But all you'd have to do, pair that with another projection. I'm going all Eagles. Saquon Barkley rushing for more or less than 115.5 rushing yards. Dallas Goedert getting more or less than 53.5 receiving yards. There's so many ways to do it, and make sure to check out the promos tab to see all the different promotions they have going on. But all you have to do, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I also need to tell you guys about Game Time because if you're looking for tickets for your next big event, maybe last minute tickets to the big game next week, whatever it is, whether it's a concert or comedy show or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works, because with Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks, and that's always where I go first on Game Time. And honestly, my favorite Christmas present I gave out this year was to my brother. Got him tickets for a comedy show on Game Time, and I knew I got the best price because the Game Time guarantee means if you find it, any event in the same section and row for less, they'll give you 110% of the difference. All you have to do is get ready to make your next event even better and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, David, well, we still have some news that broke late last week we didn't get to, but I do want to thank everyone for making us your first listen today, and to everyone who hit us up at LockedOnLAC on Twitter for the Chargers mailbag, or hit up my email, which you can find on my Twitter at DanTalkSports, or call into the voicemail line like I hear at 323-524-7924. We appreciate how everyone always gets involved, and we always want to hear what you guys want to hear about. And tomorrow's Buy or Sell Tuesday, so you can get in on the action in all those places again. But thank you for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out the new slate at Locked On NFL, where they have 2 shows a day with my guy Tyler the Madman rolling Run and Run show, and also Tony Wiggins running the other, bringing on the guests who cover their teams every day on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. David, we got into our mailbag. Now I want to get to some news because unfortunately late last week we saw the first departure from Jim Harbaugh's staff. This is from Pete Thamel, who says, sources, Chargers safety coach Chris O'Leary is expected to become the new defensive coordinator at Western Michigan. He's a former Notre Dame assistant who helped coach Xavier Watson, Kyle Hamilton while with the Irish. He also just coached Derwin James back to all-pro form last season, was a big part of that. And he is a big loss, David, because I think you look at that safety position, and especially considering the injuries that they have with Louis Gilman, the amount of guys they circulated through that spot, and how those guys came and performed, whether they were signed week 1 or in the middle of the season, it's very easy to kind of quantify how good of a job Chris O'Leary did. Wishing for the best for him, but this is a big loss.
It is. I mean, congratulations to him for getting the promotion and getting that opportunity to be a defensive coordinator. I'm sure that's going to be great for him. But yes, it is a massive loss for the Chargers because when you go up and down the line for the Chargers safety room, everyone improved. I mean, literally everyone. Like you mentioned, all-pro season for Derwin James and one of the most disruptive players close to the line of scrimmage in the NFL last year, just bar none. Best season of Elijah Molden's career, and a guy that got traded for and brought in and put on the field pretty much immediately.
No
and
training camps, no preseason games, no nothing.
A direct reflection of Chris O'Leary's ability to get him ready. Not only that, is Tony Jefferson playing really well when he's on the field. Marcus May coming in and playing very quickly and playing good football. Eddie Jackson getting signed off the street and getting put on the field and playing adequate football. It's just up and down the position group. Chris O'Leary got the best out of all of these players. His stint was very short, and it was sweet. He did a great job. He will be missed.
Yeah, and look at what the players said. I mean, Tony Jefferson came out and said, hey, one of the best coaches I've ever gotten coached by, and that's a dude who's 33 years old, as we found out on this podcast. And also, Elijah Molden basically said, hey, I second that. Both those guys gave big credit to Chris O'Leary, and part of what will make this Chargers regime successful is how they go about replacing the coaches that they lose. I'm a little surprised, not that to say that, a defensive coordinator in college isn't a promotion from being a safeties coach at the NFL level, but it does feel like this is someone that, hey, when Jesse Minter got a head coaching job down the road, would probably want to go along with that, or could be promoted to a much bigger role in what the Chargers organization has going on.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something they revisit down the road. If Jesse Minter leaves, maybe the Chargers try to bring him back in a bigger role and a bigger capacity, but they still have other great coaches and up-and-comer like a Navarro Bowman. Steve Klinkscale also did an excellent job in that secondary. It's not all doom and gloom, and we'll see who they replace him with, but this is a big loss, and it's hard to say that it's not, because this dude, wherever he's been, whatever safeties he's worked with, they found gold, right? Like everyone. I mean, they had, Notre Dame had one of the best safeties in college football this year, a guy he coached last year. Kyle Hamilton's an all-pro already. Derwin James just had an all-pro under this guy. What more can you say? Along with what you said about Tony Jefferson, Elijah Molden, Marcus May, all those guys. But let's talk about the other news. Let's talk about this news first. The Chargers blocking a coaching move. They almost lost another one of their coaches because Sanjay Law was approached by the Raiders to interview for their wide receiver coach / passing game coordinator. Little bump up in title. But unfortunately not for Sanjay Law. Maybe he'll get a bump in title here. But it's not going to happen with the Raiders because the Chargers blocked that move. The Raiders always trying to go for, poaching Chargers coaches, taking sloppy seconds when it regards to their players. Some things get very old, but take a second to laugh at the Raiders for trying to take someone that the Chargers had and not being able to do it. It's interesting. Who knows what Sanjay Law wants, right? But obviously the Chargers are telling you how much they value him and what he was able to do.
Pete Carroll wanted him back, and Jim Harbaugh said,
Yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, and you have to think Pete Carroll asking for it and Jim Harbaugh saying no. Maybe that has a little bit to do with it as well. But I think you're seeing how much the Chargers appreciate him, right, and what he does. And this is a guy that's coached under Pete Carroll 2 separate times. So, they wanted him. They're not getting him. The Chargers blocked it. But let's talk about the other news, because the Chargers reportedly will have an international game in Brazil from the Rio Times Online. According to them, a journalist named Lance reported that the Chargers will be hosting a game in Brazil in 2025, which makes a lot of sense. It's been a while since the last London game that they had. I kind of felt like one of them was coming for sure. I think the interesting thing is who they're going to play. Like, hopefully it's week 1, because, man, like, traveling like that is not easy and can easily impact your season. And I'd say the other thing is I hope they just learn from kind of what that field went through in that first game to have that field better prepared for American football that might take a bigger toll on it. Because, I mean, the first play of that game last year was a Saquon Barkley slipping in the backfield for a 5-yard loss. LeBron James tweeting, man, this field sucks. You don't want to see that. Jordan Love got hurt at the end of that game as well. So those would be my 2 biggest, like, hey, this is exciting. The NFL is trying to grow the game and all that stuff. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's all good for the Chargers. There's some kind of things that come along with this that's like, you hope for the best, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's not fun doing that amount of traveling and going that far. Like I've done trips to Germany where it takes a lot of time. It's 8-9 hours ahead, or Afghanistan where it's almost a full day ahead. It takes your mind and your body some time to acclimate that, and it's not 1 or 2 days, right? Like it takes a good amount of time for them to get comfortable and get ready. And then they have to go out there and play, one of the most physically violent games in the world. And I just hope that the Chargers improve upon their international record, because right now they are 1-2. They have played twice in Wembley and once in Mexico against the Chiefs. And so they are 1-2 in international games. So whoever they get to play in Brazil, hopefully they can make that record improve back to 500.
I think they won the last one though, right? Against the Titans in London. Is that the last one?
They played the Chiefs in Mexico after that.
Was it after that? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. Obviously those places, London's very far, Mexico not as much for the Chargers. That one works out okay for them, but you just kind of hope it's week 1. So you have that kind of free week before that, and you don't really have to have it take a huge chunk out of your bye week, which is really meant for recovery and all of those things. So I think the most interesting thing is about who it's going to be against, because I don't necessarily think it'll be a divisional game. Last year it was Packers and Eagles that opened up the season in Brazil. So that leaves you with a few options. It's not going to be the Steelers, because reportedly they're playing in Dublin this year. The Colts are reportedly playing in Germany, so it's not going to be them. You're not probably going to see the Eagles again, because they just played in Brazil last season. So I think it makes the most likely outcomes either the Texans, a rematch of the playoffs, or the Commanders, which, right, you're either getting a rematch of a playoff game or you're getting Justin Herbert versus Jaden Daniels, a dude who is really quickly shot up the ranks of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL and is right up there on Justin Herbert's heels and in a lot of people's minds ahead of him now. So that'd be a great chance to kind of set the record straight potentially over who the better quarterback is. So really good potential matchups. It should be a lot of fun, and you just hope that nothing that happens in that game has a lasting impact on your season, because the NFL is trying to expand the game globally. And just to be honest, at some point, and at some points, at the expense of player health, at the expense of what is right for these players' bodies and all of those things. So hopefully that's not the case, but you never know, and you just have to hope for the best. I do think it's exciting. It'll be a cool game. It sucks because you lose one of the home games you would have had. You're supposed to have 9 in 2025. Now you'll have 8, because that's not really a home game for the Chargers. We'll see what happens. It's exciting that the Chargers, are showcased on that platform, and we'll see if they come through, because they might have a chance very, very early to prove if they can beat bad teams or not. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow, because it's Buy or Sell Tuesday, so you can get your buy or sells in at Locked On LAC on Twitter, or you can hit us up for me at Dan Talk Sports, David at Dro Talk SD, or you can call yours in at 323-524-7924. That's not the only reason you need to make sure you don't miss the show, because you need to subscribe and follow for free right now on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, because later on this week, on the Wednesday show, we have the Ranger, Deion Henley, future Pro Bowl / All-Pro linebacker, coming on the show to make his second appearance now that we've actually seen he was able to break out. So we're super excited about that. Make sure you're following and getting notifications wherever you get them from, so you make sure you don't miss that one. But also, make sure you're back here tomorrow for Buy or Sell Tuesday. And if you have a great buy or sell, make sure you get it into us so we can get it on the show, because we love doing Buy or Sell Tuesday and we love getting you guys involved with it. So be back here tomorrow for that. Until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.